I'm Natalia Lobach, and this is Change Course. For the newbies, when all is said and done. Success and change comes when your leadership can not only talk the talk, but also walk the walk. So when all is said, it must also be done. As a new change manager, one of the most challenging things that you're going to be working with is figuring out how to help people change their behaviors. And there's a component of talking about it, telling people what they need to do, lining up and outlining what that behavior change is going to look like. And then there's actually doing it. And I am sure that so many of us have common experiences in this area. And this is where our tendency as humans and our fallibility can really come into focus. So I don't know how many of you, let's just say when we're starting a new habit, we want to start a new habit. We're going to start exercising regularly. And you spend a lot of time thinking about what it is that you're going to do, how you're going to do it, when you're going to do it, where. And you come up with a big, grand plan that you're going to get up at 6 a.m. and you're going to exercise. And then the next morning, when the alarm rings at 6 a.m., you roll over and go back to sleep. The success in really bedding down a good change has to come with the doing as well as the talking. And something that might help us get out of bed at 6 a.m. to start a new exercise program is knowing that there's somebody waiting for us, knowing that we're going to be part of a group. And if we don't go, we're going to let them down. That's why looking at change from a group context is so helpful. When we see the people around us demonstrating the change, showing us that they can do it, also, when this comes from leadership and we see our leaders demonstrating the change, we have an easier time doing it ourselves. So when we're talking about behavior change and implementation, this is the crux of it. Communication and preparation and awareness building is only going to get you so far. There is a gap between the moment that we know what we're supposed to do and that moment that we actually do it. This is where the leadership component is just so incredibly important. Visible leadership. Leadership seen actually doing the change, taking those first steps is critically important. Then, using the communication, so talking the talk, and talking about that successful change, talking about what that looks and feels like, gathering feedback, that helps to create that cycle of adoption. Importantly, this is where your change champions become really helpful and influential. So, getting your change champions to not only talk the talk, but also walk the walk, just like your leaders, is hugely impactful for getting that momentum going in your change. That's why I chose the title for this episode, When All Is Said and Done. As you're looking at your 4 phases of the change management plan, you'll see that communications play an important part throughout the cycle that you're working with. So at the beginning, a lot of the communications are going to be awareness focused. You're going to be talking about the change. You're going to be helping leaders talk about the change. You're going to be finding different creative ways to communicate. These days, there are so many options. I started out in change when really the only tool that we had was staff meetings. So verbal delivery by a team's leader, or email blasts or email newsletters. Newsletters have come a long way. I still love them. I think they're a great tool, but there are so many other things that we can use as well. I remember too, about 20 years ago, something that would happen when a change occurred was that you would get an all company voicemail. Now, I know voicemail has gone the way of the dodo, but there are different ways that we can use audio and visual, audio, video technology to help us communicate effectively. During the pandemic, I saw a lot of leaders pick up their cell phone and cell phone cameras for the first time and actually deliver video messages to their people. This was very effective. And I know a lot of leaders have trepidation about appearing on video, but the truth is that this is now where the expectation is. Video is part of the game. So if you are a leader, yes, your face is out there, but video is one of the most effective communication tools that we have now. What's wonderful about video is that you can also make it accessible. So for those who are hearing impaired, you can have captions. Captions are so easy to add to videos nowadays. It's a fantastic innovation. You also have that ability to bridge language barriers and language gaps by using captions and translation, or even for people who are less adept in the language that they're working in. It's really helpful to have those reinforcing language tools to help messages get across. For visually impaired people, you have the audio feature. So it's a really nice all-encompassing type of tool. There are some groups that, are more difficult to access with video, but by and large, when you're working in an organization, this is a fantastic tool. Audio can be a good tool. Internal podcasts, that kind of thing, publications, newsletters have really come a long way. So lots of visually appealing types of communications can be used. And then, of course, looking at how leadership and change champions can also help deliver some verbal messages. And again, there typically is a high reliance on messages cascading. And this would be a point of warning or caution that I would put out there for any new change managers. If the organization has a well-established cascade type of practice, then absolutely try it out. I would suggest proof of concept. But generally, you're going to hear from leadership sometimes that messages, quote unquote, will cascade. Managers are responsible to speak to their teams about these things. Well, yes, that is true. However, what happens is the change is a very low priority at the beginning of your change management cycle. Managers typically don't spend the vast majority of their time speaking to their team and disseminating communication. That is something that happens on a regular cadence, but it isn't the focus of their work. And so high priority issues are the ones that are going to get talked about. The change won't be talked about until it becomes a high priority. And at that point, it's too late. So relying on things like using the hierarchical structure to cascade communications is not a good idea. You're going to want to find what are the conduits that are commonly being used. Is there an internal communications person that you can work with? what are the established practices around communications inside the organization, and how can you, as the change manager, tap into those? Then, leadership messaging is really important. Yes, there are going to be other priorities, but if leaders are investing in the change, it is an investment and it will be a priority. And so making that case for leadership about how often and how early they need to start talking about the change is going to be part of your role as a change manager. Some leaders get it right away, others take a little bit of time. The key is that the messages are coming from a variety of sources and they're coming at a fairly regular interval, so that by the time you're done with the change, people are really tired of hearing about it. In fact, that is one of the indicators that I use. How tired are you of hearing about this particular initiative? It does make me laugh a little bit, but if I have really tired them out and people are exhausted from hearing the message about change, then I've done my job well. Walking the walk can be a bit more complicated. And this is where it's really important for that change sponsor to be one of the people out in the forefront actually doing the work. One of the most impactful changes I've seen is when a leader actually went to the shop floor, they went to the manufacturing line and participated in the change with the people who were on the manufacturing line. It's pretty incredible when that happens. There can be a big divide between leadership and the people they lead. That divide can be power within the organization. It can be economic structure and economic class. It can be social class. There can be big differences between the people who lead the organization and those who they are leading and those who we want to make change happen. So talking is one thing, but talk is cheap. Doing and demonstrating and leading by example is really where the power lies. And so as much as you can, encourage your leaders to find ways to make visible demonstrations of the change, to show their commitment, to bed down that commitment with the people that they lead, but also that they're walking the walk at their level. It's hugely important. The other piece, the third piece, is skills training. So in a lot of change, if you are encountering a change in process or change in procedure, changing the way things are done, there is a component of training as well. The most effective training programs that I've seen are led by people within the organization. A lot of times, organizational leaders will ask the project manager or change manager to lead the training initiatives. And this, in my experience, is very ineffective. And this is where it can be hard for managers and leaders to step into that role. As a new change manager, I'd encourage you to hold your line on this one. The more management and leadership can get involved in training delivery, the better off you'll be. Sometimes there can be vendor-delivered training. Often it ends up being quite limited in quality. I have not really seen a lot of well-delivered or well-prepared vendor training initiatives. The absolute best thing that you can do is actually train while doing. So instead of the old way where you pull people into a training classroom and you deliver, quote unquote, deliver training, the best way to do training delivery and learning by doing is actually doing that learning on the job or in the new environment or with the new protocols in place. A lot of times we try to do this in technology in something called a sandbox environment where you get to try it out, you get to, give it a shot. Honestly, this can be helpful, but you may get a lot of resistance around, we don't have time. We have our own job. We have our regular jobs to do. We don't have time to do this. We need, we need some other way to get trained, some other way to do this. Micro training is really effective. So again, audio, visual, finding ways to break things down into very bite-sized chunks, but also point in time. So as the people are actually implementing the change, having those training resources at their fingertips, so they're not sitting in multiple 2-hour-long sessions. They can actually, as they're doing what it is that they're doing, be able to connect with a very short instructional component that can then help them get through that new learning, that new change. So having some more self-directed options, having some better ways to engage in the moment for training is really where I see this going in change. There are so many more tools now available for this, and I really think that if this is going to be a key component of the change that you are in charge of planning and executing, think about some creative ways on how you can do that training, and then think about peer-to-peer training opportunities as well. So once one person has figured it out, how do they then share that knowledge? How are they accountable to help their peers to learn and change as well? So as we talked about today, when all is said and done, when all is said, thinking about the communications and the purpose of those communications at different points within your phases of change. When all is done, thinking about how you are having leadership demonstrate and bed down those changes, walk the walk, show people what it is that they want to have done, what the change looks like. And then also those change champions, making sure that they're empowered to actually walk the walk as well. And then the third piece, training, and some things to think about there around delivering training in a way that serves the people who are changing and finding ways to access people in a more innovative way rather than the old way, which, was all day or half day classroom style sessions, which I must say are not as effective. Certainly it doesn't meet the way that I have seen people learn, and, the science coming out of adult education and adult learning styles and patterns would support that. I hope you found this helpful today, and tune in. We've done 3 episodes of 4 so far. Our next episode and our final episode in this series for the newbies will be next week. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, I invite you to like, share, rate, and subscribe because it helps others find us. You can find our show notes on our website at www.charthouse.ca, where each episode has a page under the Change Course podcast. So anything that I referenced in today's episode will be posted there so you can find it. While you're visiting us, sign up for the Change Navigator newsletter. You'll get a monthly dispatch of all things change, what we're working on, and our latest research. Our music is Levity by Emily Klassen. Change Course is available wherever you listen to podcasts. We also have an accessible version on YouTube with fully edited captions. You can find the link to our YouTube channel in the show notes. Thank you again for listening, and remember, it's never too late to change course.